The United States has given the Palestinian group Hamas an ultimatum. President Donald Trump says they've got 3 to 4 days to accept his 21-point peace plan and get in line alongside the Israelis or face the consequences. Trump was clear when he spoke to journalists after his White House meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu 24 hours ago that failure to comply would open Hamas to Israel stepping up its military operation. The situation will get worse, with Trump vowing full backing to whatever Israel decides to do. And Netanyahu's words to Hamas were these: it's either the easy way, i.e. comply, or the hard way, which would be more Palestinian deaths in a stepped-up Israeli attack. Let's get some analysis of the situation and bring in Fathi Nimer, who is a Palestinian Policy Fellow at the Al-Shabaka think tank in Ramallah, joining us live from the West Bank. Fathi, thanks for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your presence and your time. This ultimatum from Trump to Hamas, I'm wondering how this 21-point deal is being viewed in the Palestinian territories. Can you give us some insight, please, into that?
Well, I mean, it's less being seen as a deal and more seen as a surrender diktat, basically. I don't know what more Trump could do to threaten Hamas at this point, what more Netanyahu could be doing to Gaza at this point, because there has been no really red lines either by the Biden administration or by the Trump administration. But to say it more simply, the plan is basically a surrender plan. It's very vague and imprecise. It's obvious that it is, contoured around Israeli demands and Israeli interests, with Palestinians being a mere afterthought. And this makes sense basically because also the Arab states and the media has no clue about some of the changes that Netanyahu made at the last minute. And this is also part of why they are furious about it in private leaked memos. But the thing is about it is that there's absolutely no guarantees that Israel will abide by it. Even if Hamas decided to go to the letter and do everything, there are absolutely no guarantees. Everything in the language is vague, it's imprecise, it's saying there might be a path towards statehood, they're saying that pending on reformations, and these are very big, loopholes or gray space areas where Netanyahu could very simply say, well, I'm not satisfied and I want to break it. And we saw this. Israel unilaterally broke a ceasefire in March of this year, and it could very easily do that somewhat more. It's not exactly the most reliable partner to be negotiating with, since it's tried to assassinate multiple negotiating teams. So I'm sure that Hamas and other groups in Gaza are discussing this, but I don't have any illusions about them thinking that this is going to be some kind of deal that will actually end the genocide that is currently going on, especially considering that they want Hamas to disband all of its weapons, disband itself, basically surrender unilaterally, and to give up all the prisoners that they have within 72 hours, after which there's absolutely no reason why Netanyahu could not go back to war. And as we saw earlier, nobody's stopping him. There have been no repercussions really from the United States, and every red line that was spoken about was crossed with barely any kind of consequence.
What do you think, Fathi, Hamas will do at this point? I mean, clearly, if this is calling for the disarmament of Hamas, it's basically calling for the abolition of Hamas as a military force, as a force that could respond to any kind of attack in any way, shape or form. One might argue that it's been flattened already, but there are obviously reports that say that Hamas is still existing, is still there, and is still resolute to continue. What do you think Hamas will do?
Well, it's difficult to speculate really what Hamas and the other groups are doing. They're taking their decision with other groups as well, not by themselves, because they have access to information we're not privy to. They also have access to the actual deal with more details that we're also not privy to. We have just the broad points of what it is. And I think the mechanism of everything, of how it is going to look in reality, that will also be an important part if they want to agree or not. But generally speaking, I think the biggest point of this deal is that it doesn't look for root solutions to what's going on. It's looking mostly for band-aid solutions. It's going to recreate the same exact condition, which is foreign occupation of a territory that led to the creation of Hamas to begin with in the 80s. Hamas has not been that long in the conflict. It's a very recent phenomenon, only in the late 80s. So it didn't start with, it didn't end with Hamas. It won't end with Hamas for sure if they decide to disband, which I'm very skeptical about. And I think it's important that we place everything in its historical context. It's not the first time that these kinds of deals are trying to be imposed on Palestinians. Agree or disagree, it seems to have very little effect on it. I mean, the Palestinian Authority is completely complying with everything Israel wants in the West Bank. And look at it today. It's being devoured completely by over 700,000 settlers. There have been communities that have been ethnically cleansed of all of its residents in the last few years. So it's not exactly any kind of situation where Palestinians can trust either the United States or Israel. And as usual, the United States is acting more as Israel's lawyer than as some kind of neutral third party that can actually bring arbitration to what's going on. We saw this in Oslo, we saw this in Camp David, and it continues to this day.
I think many people hear what you're saying, Fathi, but in terms of what we've heard over the past 24 hours from the White House, from that briefing by Trump and Netanyahu, there was this possibility, they said, that the investment in Gaza will be to the benefit of Palestinians and they can choose to stay, and if they leave, they can actually have the right to come back, the right of return. Do you view that as something positive? And I suppose it all comes down to whether you believe what they're saying or not, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bit of a red flag that they're saying that, they're not going to be ethnically cleansing all the people of Gaza. I mean, that should probably be the baseline, international law, which has completely been broken on the back of the last 2 years of genocide. That these ideas of investment, these ideas of free trade zones, they all sound, lovely on paper. So does trickle-down economics. It doesn't always work out that way, and there can be no real growth under occupation. They've been trying for 30 years. There's been so much investment in the West Bank to try, kickstart the economy. But as long as Israel has a military presence there, and there's no indication that they will retreat out of all of Gaza, even if they have these forces, these foreign-funded forces, God knows who they're coming from. There's no indication that this will actually, lead to any kind of economic boom. They've been talking about this since Oslo. They called it the peace dividends. This will open up investment. It will open up so much, opportunities for work. It's never materialized. And it's because you can't have any growth under occupation, under control. When your borders are under control, when your airspace are under control, you can't. You have very small kind of maneuverability, and that's even if the promises are actually true and it's not revoked on some kind of technicality or some kind of slight that Netanyahu detects.
How about the position of the Palestinian Authority on this?
Well, the Palestinian Authority has already welcomed this decision. I believe that the United Kingdom's embassy had a statement about this. The Palestinian embassy in the United Kingdom, because they see themselves as eventually they could replace this international force in Gaza. And they see no problem with basically coming on the back of the tanks of the Israelis and the Americans at this point, which is a huge break with the rest of the Palestinians in general. So they see it as an opportunity. That is, if the plan goes through as it is said. But Netanyahu has already said multiple times that he would never allow the Palestinian Authority to rule Gaza or to run Gaza. He said he would never allow a two-state solution. He would never allow any of the things that are supposed to be the incentive for Palestinians to sign on to this deal. So it seems like a lot of it is a non-starter before we even talked about. They're talking about open statements to Likud hours after the plan was publicized. So it's not like it's something hidden or off the agenda. It's very obvious that Netanyahu is not interested. He has not been interested in any ceasefire for the last 2 years, and I don't see any change in that position.
So in terms of what we have, 3 to 4 days, says Trump, for Hamas to give its reply. If it doesn't comply with this, then basically things could get a lot worse for people in the Gaza Strip. You've mentioned genocide, and many authorities are saying it is genocide which is happening. And certainly the figures, if you look at them, 66,000 Palestinians, many of them women and children, killed since October the 7th, 2023, when Hamas launched its attack on southern Israel. Clearly there is a major, major death toll, and people are suffering, and there is famine in places as well. It is a horrible situation by any stretch of the imagination. Is it not perhaps time for Hamas to look to, in some way, shape or form, to stop what is happening by perhaps agreeing to this deal?
Listen, it's easy for me to sit here and kind of pontificate about this. I have a full belly. I'm sitting in my own home. I'm not sleeping in the streets. Ultimately, the decision will be taken by the people of Gaza, and Hamas is not some, foreign or alien body. Hamas is made up of the people of Gaza, and Gaza are made up of the people of Hamas and other factions, and it's very popular at this point. It's difficult to see what they are planning, because again, they are privy to information we do not know, and they have their own calculus of how everything goes. You could argue that if they surrendered, everything will go okay, but Again, I give you the West Bank as the counterfactual. The counterfactual is the West Bank is completely unprecedentedly under attack in every single way. So again, there's very little indication on, even if Hamas agreed to all of this, that situation will actually get better. It's like, this is not something that's just happening. This is something that's been going on for decades and decades, and we have such a long kind of memory of this. And I think it'll be a mistake to just look at the last 2 years if it was a separate escalation or a separate kind of deal, because it's not.
Fathi Nimer, we appreciate your time and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. And I would add that you're joining us from Ramallah in the West Bank. You say you're sitting there somewhere comfortable, but you're seeing things on a day-to-day basis, and what you're telling us is basically informed by the experience that you've lived through. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we, of course, just seeking to understand what is going on, because from the outside, sometimes it just seems to be incomprehensible. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, Fathi Nimer, the Palestinian Policy Fellow at the Al-Shabaka think tank in Ramallah. Thank you very much indeed.